Rain, do you believe in ghosts?
Yes, absolutely. I'm terrified of them.
Today we're going to be talking about the potentially one of the most haunted places in the U.S. state of Nebraska, the Ball Cemetery. It is said to be haunted by ghosts.
Well, that's one place I'll never go to.
How come?
Because it's full of ghosts.
But why though? Don't you want to see them for yourself?
Oh yeah, no. I'm good without ever seeing one.
So the Ball Cemetery is located 15 minutes south of the small town of Springfield in the state of Nebraska, in a rural area. It's just north of the Platte River. It's claimed to be the most haunted location in the state of Nebraska. It was first established in the 19th century by pioneers and still privately owned by the Ball family. This cemetery is not just a resting place for the departed, but a hotbed of legends and ghostly encounters. Among this most notable residents is William Liddiard. He is also known as Rattlesnake Pete, a man whose adventures with the famous Buffalo Bill cemented his place in history. Do you know about Buffalo Bill?
Not necessarily, but I love how they sound like characters, or maybe they are characters.
I don't think that it's their real names, it's their pseudonyms. So Buffalo Bill was this kind of American adventurer who was very famous throughout the world, and a man who associated with Buffalo Bill is said to be buried in the Ball Cemetery. This man is Rattlesnake Pete. So beyond its historical significance, the Ball Cemetery is notorious for being one of the most haunted locations in Nebraska, and mysterious apparitions and unexplained injuries have plagued the people who visit the location. The stories emerging from this graveyard are truly chilling. I'm gonna show you a few images of how this cemetery looks like. So this is the aerial view of the cemetery, and it's located on private property. I believe it's still owned by the Ball family. So visiting it is kind of difficult because the owners, the people who are trying to protect the place, they will try to get rid of any trespassers.
Is it just me, or does it look like a coffin?
The Ball Cemetery? From the
aerial view.
From the satellite view, right? Oh, we just lost image for some reason. Okay, yeah. A coffin? It doesn't look like a coffin to me. I don't see it.
Maybe just me.
Yeah,
it either
really
looks like
see
the pin on Google Map upside down, or like a teardrop. Okay, a teardrop.
Yeah. I think you're looking at the road though. The cemetery starts somewhere here in the wooded areas.
My bad.
So this is the entrance. It's looks like it's a gate. And the thing about this cemetery is that local teenagers from Nebraska, they trespass this location on a fairly irregular basis. And the people who keep this cemetery, they say that they have to pick up all sorts of trash and even beer cans off of the graves of their family members, which is really disrespectful.
Extremely.
And you could kind of understand their frustrations with the people who tend to go to this location.
I guess based on the reputation, it has gotten teenagers, I don't know, from my opinion, from the way I see it, they kind of tend to view it more as a challenge.
Right.
Instead of like an actual cemetery where people died and you have to respect them. It's more of like, oh, this is the scariest place in Nebraska. Time for a party. Let's see if we would find ghosts.
Yeah, well, that's what teenagers do usually. They don't. They have no regards for, private property.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. So I'm gonna basically get straight to it here. We have a few accounts and a few experiences of people giving their first-hand experiences of their basically party or road trips. I'll tell you what happened and you tell me how you feel about them. Do you think it's all fake, or do you think there's something to it? And then later we're going to be taking a look at a paranormal research conducted by a paranormal research organization that had went to this cemetery in 2004, I believe, and they have found something. So let's start off with a few encounters. So all of these encounters are actually covered on the Unsolved Mysteries podcast, not the TV show, but the podcast version of that show. And this is actually the very first case that they ever talked about. So I have a few stories. The first story is of a man named Ty Duncan, who was a 19-year-old when he first visited in 1995. He was with some friends, and they were driving from Omaha, which is, one of the biggest cities, I think the biggest city in the state. And some of the friends suggested that they would go and check out the Haunted Ball Cemetery. This man, Ty Duncan, immediately felt like it was a bad idea, even 20 minutes before they actually drove towards this cemetery, like when they were 20 minutes away from it. They got to the cemetery around 7 p.m. in the evening, and the first thing that was very strange to Ty Duncan was that when he entered the cemetery, he looked into the distance and he believes he saw a woman. He saw a woman in the tree line in the distance, standing and laughing at all of the people who just entered the cemetery.
Oh, that's immediately creepy.
Could you imagine that? What would be your reaction?
I would literally run, jump in the car, and drive.
You would just leave the premises.
Oh, yeah.
So this is not what Ty Duncan and his group of teenage friends decided to do. They decided to walk in deeper into the cemetery, and they walked to the back of the cemetery, and Ty Duncan started laughing uncontrollably. He felt like he had stepped out of his body, and he claimed that he was possessed. He was actually able to predict that one of his female friends, who was also at the cemetery at that time, would start feeling some sort of a pain. And this woman, Cindy, actually started feeling a really strong sensation of pain at the same time as this Ty Duncan predicted. So Ty Duncan basically said to another friend, like, oh, look, Cindy is about to have some sort of a weird, painful moment. And Cindy started feeling a painful sensation. All of them started running towards the car. Now, Ty Duncan continued just to stand there in the middle of the cemetery, laughing uncontrollably until some of his friends got a hold of him, and they basically stuffed him into the car, and that's when he basically became unpossessed. And to this day, Ty Duncan has no explanation to what really happened to him that night at the Ball Cemetery. The only thing he knows is that he was possessed.
Just really quickly, this reminded me of a story that my coworker actually told us just recently. A couple of days ago, we were hanging out and we were kind of talking about some paranormal experiences at one of those times. And she mentioned that she was once possessed. And she basically, I can't really quite remember if their house was haunted or they went to a haunted place. But basically, she just started screaming and screaming and screaming continuously.
Is this the same coworker that I'm thinking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so apparently she started screaming and screaming continuously, just kept on screaming. And her family called like a spiritual person, I don't even know what it's called, to like bless her, make the spirit go away. They managed to do it. And on the same day, she felt better. She immediately fell asleep. And when she woke up, she said she remembered screaming. She remembered the whole thing, but she did not remember why she was screaming.
Yeah, I mean, I have no comments to that. It sounds so far-fetched, but at the same time, I mean, this person really told you that.
Years afterwards, she's still pretty convinced that, like,
she was possessed.
She did not intentionally scream.
So she was possessed.
Yeah, she said she doesn't know. Like, she couldn't control her body back then. I don't know, it kind of reminded me.
How old was she?
Beats me. Probably somewhere in her 20s or late teenage years.
Okay. That's so strange because, I mean, I find it very hard to believe but at the same time, this is a adult.
Yeah, who's still very convinced that what happened to her there was not intentional.
That, yeah. I mean, what other explanations would there be? She lost her mind temporarily?
In the middle of a haunted place? Maybe she was too scared, panicked. Logical.
Yeah, okay, that's a strange. Okay, but
it reminds me of the story here
of Ty Duncan.
Yeah,
right? Do you think Ty Duncan has experienced something similar in the Ball Cemetery in 1995? He was possessed by that lady, right? Obviously, I mean, I feel like what Ty Duncan is trying to say, that he was possessed by that lady who was standing in the distance.
Yeah, sure. It could be like a massive prank to all of the other friends, but at the same time, if it's not, and with your story, it didn't seem like it is, it's just really weird.
It's really weird. Now, this is not the weirdest story coming out of the Ball Cemetery. This is just the beginning. Now,
did they go at nighttime, sorry? Or do you think midday?
When this was happening?
Yeah.
So this was happening in 1995 at 7 p.m. So I don't know what time of year, but I think it was getting up there.
Getting dark.
Yeah,
possibly.
Dark.
It's extra spooky.
So the woman that Ty Duncan saw, apparently she appears on a fairly regular basis in the Ball Cemetery. It is believed that this woman is actually Mary Ingersoll Mumford, because people report strange phenomenon around her grave, like laughing or something tugging on their clothes while they stand next to Mary's grave.
Okay, immediately. A massive coincidence, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, random people, multiple people just started laughing at her grave. Pretty weird.
Pretty strange. The woman, okay, so another local man named Trey, he himself and a group of friends decided to check out the cemetery as well. And some tombstones were knocked over as they entered the cemetery. They tried calling the spirits, and they started hearing a weird noise around the cemetery. On the south side of the cemetery, there was a windmill that started spinning. It was not spinning at all when they entered the cemetery, so they were thinking it's pretty strange because there's no wind. How is this windmill spinning? And then the windmill started slowing down, and it stopped. And then it started spinning in the other on the other rotation, change rotations. That's when everyone freaked out, and they started running back towards their car. Some of them started bleeding as they ran, and actually everyone from Trey's group of friends, they all had cuts on their bodies.
This one seems a little too far-fetched for me. Ty Duncan's story is a little more realistic.
More believable than Trey's.
It's a little too Netflixy, if you know what I mean. But maybe it did happen.
But this is not the only story that Trey has told.
Ooh.
So Trey had a girlfriend at that time, and his girlfriend's grandmother had a burial plot on the Ball Cemetery. So the two of them decided to investigate. As they approached the cemetery, they ran into some other people whose car seemingly stopped working after they had visited the cemetery. What a coincidence. Maybe their car was haunted or something. So Trey and his girlfriend decided to help them out and help jumpstart the engine of the car that was not working anymore. At this point, it was around midnight, and the people from the other car asked Trey and his girlfriend if they could follow Trey to get out of the premises so they wouldn't get lost. So Trey and the girlfriend obviously agreed because they were trying to be helpful. So at some point in the midnight, they're driving out of the cemetery premises. They're already kind of, spooked out. And Trey looks back at the rear view window, and he sees that there's no car behind him anymore. So their first assumption was that maybe that car stalled again, and they backtracked all the way to the place where they first found these people.
Why would you do that? I would just drive away.
Well, they decided to backtrack, and the other car was nowhere to be found. and they never saw that car ever again.
Jeez, I just can't.
What do you think about that one?
Too spooky.
It's pretty paranormal, right? And Trey told another story. This is the last story about the Ball Cemetery from Trey. So Trey's last story comes from a time where one of his friends, by the name of Zach, actually was not a believer that the Ball Cemetery was haunted. So Trey, Zach, and another friend, James, all three of them, they decided to drive to the cemetery and try to experience something spooky. So as they drove into the cemetery and just sat there, they rolled down the windows of the car and they just sat idly. They immediately heard a girl scream in the distance. They looked into the dark and they saw something, and they were really spooked out. So they decided to leave the premises. They went to a gas station which was nearby to the cemetery. They went inside to buy some snacks or something like that. After they came out of that gas station, the car had symbols all over it. There was a giant triangle across the hood of the car, and there were also some handprints and thumbprints all over it.
Once again, it sounds super Netflixy to me. I mean, it could have happened.
So yeah, what do you make of it? You don't believe it?
For this one, it's a little too much for me to believe on. What do you think, as a non-believer?
I think it's too much, honestly. I think if we went to Ball Cemetery today, I don't believe that we would experience all of this.
Possibly, like, maybe hearing something from a distance, or like seeing something on the edge of our like vision. That could be a possibility.
Yeah, but I don't think it's gonna be that we're gonna be. I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm gonna get possessed in the Ball Cemetery. I'm still not a believer. That's why I think we need to go and investigate somewhere at
I
night.
think you should take your brother with you. Honestly,
You don't want to go?
No.
Okay. So
Just report back to me.
Okay. So there's a guy named David Pierce Rodriguez, the founder of PRISM, Paranormal Research and Investigative Studies. He went to the Ball Cemetery in 2004, and he had some positive EMF responses and EVPs and took some strange pictures. And I want to kind of go over their findings on their website. You could find a lot of like details. It's actually a pretty interesting URL that they are using for their website. It's doyouseedeadpeople.org. And if you go here, you will find this research investigation. So, they went in there, they did their research. Long story short, we have some images. And I want you to react to the images, and I want you to tell me, what do you think? Do you think, is this a spooky image? So the first image is, I'm going to give you a little backstory. It was approximately 9 p.m. in the evening. PRISM investigators met with Sarpy County deputy who escorted them to the Ball Cemetery. The short turnaround gravel road going into Ball is dark and tree-lined and made for an appropriate start for the investigation. PRISM stayed at the cemetery for 3 hours, taking many photographs and audio recordings. Unfortunately, due to the light rain that fell during most of the investigation, most of the photos had been discarded. After going through the evidence, one spectrum photo of a shadow and one EVP were captured. So we're looking at one of the images right now. And I don't know what I'm looking at here.
I mean, I could see a shadow, but it could be a shadow of a person or a tree.
Where is the shadow?
On the lower right corner.
Oh, the lower right corner. I think this might be the person who is taking the picture. It's their shadow. Does it make, or do you think this is a shadow of a apparition?
I mean, they were talking about a shadow, and this is the only shadow that I could see.
Yeah, I do see some light orbs, but this could be rain droplets, as was mentioned previously.
Or dust.
Or dust particles. We have another encounter, and there was another picture taken in 2005 on April 3rd. The cemetery gates were closed this night, so both investigators had to take their photos, videos, and EMF readings from outside of the fence, which lines the cemetery. No unusual EMF readings were recorded. One EVP and light anomaly were recorded on a handheld video camera, and lots of extremely large orbs were photographed by the researchers. And this is the image. So orbs. I see orbs all over the place. But these are kind of, what do you think? Weird?
Not necessarily. I do see a lot of orbs, but once again, it could be natural causes. What is it exactly that we're looking at?
We're looking at a man standing in front of the gates to the Ball Cemetery. He is just standing there, and we are witnessing some orbs.
How about on the lower right side? There seems to be like a weird... Is it a fence?
It's a fence, yeah.
Why is it kind of like transparent?
It's just that type of a fence. I don't think it's anything strange. It's just it's not like a high-tech fence, just a regular fence.
Mm-hmm. If that's the case, then I don't see anything.
Anything paranormal?
Not
okay,
necessarily.
another image from 2005 shows what appears to be an ectoplasmic mist hovering over one of the graves in the Ball Cemetery. Another image. Seems like an ectoplasmic mist.
It does look like a smoke coming out from the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is... I can't explain it. It's just definitely odd. If there wasn't any smoke coming up from the ground, I have no other explanations for this. What do you think?
Jeepers Creepers.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. And then we have another image from April 3rd. Huge orbs photographed floating around the grave. Another image of floating orbs.
I'm not very convinced with orbs because I do think it could be just rain or dust particles. Something.
How about this? The prison researchers had captured a very interesting light anomaly. It was captured on June 7th in 2008 on a 35mm camera by one of the gravestones in the Ball Cemetery. It's a strange light. But I will say that my verdict on this case is that it's possibly not that spooky, because we have official investigators coming in and they're barely finding anything.
Yeah.
And then we have that guy named Trey who every time he goes here, there's like a Ghostbusters episode.
Yeah, that's true.
So I call Trey's experience fake.
Do you think he was just being a teenager? Kind of overreacting.
Definitely overreacting. And my official verdict is that there's nothing wrong in the Ball Cemetery and it's all fake.
You think so?
I think it's all fake, and I wouldn't be scared enough to go into the Ball Cemetery and just investigate myself. I don't think it's haunted, and I have yet to see any official proof that there's anything suspicious happening in the Ball Cemetery. So I feel like we potentially wasted the audience time here.
No, I don't think so. I do think there are supernatural things or energies that we have no capacity to fully understanding, but they need to be respected instead of being mocked.
Exactly. So this is where I would like to conclude the episode, because I have nothing else to talk about.
There might be a future trip to Nebraska for you then.
Yeah, potentially.
And we'll update this.
Yes. Thank you guys for listening.
And let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.